Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now, we are joined by Central Goat, Neil, Eli, and a whole bunch of people in the Flat Earth Debate Discord server, so welcome one and all.
How are you?
I'm alright, Neil. How are you?
Not so good, but we'll leave it alone.
How are you, Eli, you big girly man? Eli was accused of being girly in the pre-show.
I'm sorry for that.
Thank you. Very amusing. How are you, Sensual? Haven't heard from you yet.
I'm tired, mate. Just woke up. How are you?
I'm alright. Slightly finer fettle than last week. Good. Not great. I'm okay.
Gotta give Central Goat some credit because he's been saying refraction for months. And sure enough, that's what's going on. Shout out to Central Goat.
What do you mean he's been saying refraction for ages? Saying that our opponents will use that as a rebuttal?
Yeah, he comes in with his little schneid remark, refraction. And sure enough, that's what we got Flat Earthers talking about. Refraction indexes, and all things like that.
Okay, I don't see any
That's
issue
what the
with
black
that.
swan does to you.
What's wrong with that? People want to talk about refraction, Snell's law. Snell's law is real. Refraction is real. Globe refraction over R, 7/6 of it, isn't refraction. It's a mathematical derivation of an R value that they apply to our argument when taking apart their use of a begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator when comparing a view you get through a camera to mathematics where Earth curve only exists in said mathematics and has a 7/6 of said radius derivation that they then call refraction. That isn't refraction. That's terrestrial refraction, otherwise known as a derivation of an R value that only exists in maths. Refraction is Snell's law. It requires two different mediums and a boundary layer. It's the light moving between the boundary layer and changing direction as it does so. It's described in Snell's law. That's refraction.
Well, what's going on in Skunk Bay, Nathan? Huh?
I mean, what's going on in Skunk Bay?
Have you not seen the video? What kind of flat earther are you?
I don't know what's going on in Skunk Bay. Why would I need to explain what's going on in Skunk Bay?
They're going to laugh you to scorn.
Right, because I don't know what's going on in the Skunk Bay imagery from 10 years ago. I'm going to get laughed at. All right, I don't care. Why would I need to explain it was my question.
Yeah, that was my question, too, when I was confronted with it. It means nothing. When you know Earth is measured flat, all of this stuff is nonsense.
I mean, in recent years, we've had concessions from our opponents. Like, quite explicit concessions in regards to the reality of how Earth gets surveyed. Now, those concessions come with certain disclaimers, like, yes, Earth is measured flat locally, but at a large scale, it is claimed by our opponents that Earth curvature is taken into consideration. Incorrect. Brian's been going on about this for quite some time. Now, he always references his father-in-law, who is a geodesic surveyor. Now, if you take the information that they utilise to measure elevation, they take horizontal distance measurements. So, they're measuring Earth flat at all scales. when we survey Earth, it is flat. Now, this isn't up for contention. It's not up for debate. It is what it is. Now, if you decide that you want to infer that after measuring Earth flat at the local scale, or after measuring Earth flat at the larger scale with horizontal distances for trig to work, you can contest it all you like. But the trig won't work unless you've got a horizontal distance. Now, that's not a debate. That's not me suggesting we survey Earth flat. It is a statement of absolute fact. Earth is measured flat at all scales.
So I guess that's what Eli means when you bring up the measurements, that you're well versed in how to do it, Nathan, how to lay it out just like that. That's perfect. So if that's what they're looking for, they can always come to Flat Earth Debate Live every morning.
People like is servitude the right word? Where they are subservient to their rulers, teachers, masters. That's servitude. Have I got the right word? People like being in a position when they kowtow to the authority that's given them the information in the first place. It is whatever embarrassing to relinquish a previously held belief as being exactly that, a belief. But for me now, 10 years into this subject, I don't care. You know, I've lost all sympathy for these idiots. We're telling you, we're not asking you, we're not inviting you to debate with us anymore. That time has passed. People don't seem to understand that. I'm now telling you how it is. Now, you can respond by chanting at me that you know it's a ball because you've known for 1,000 years. You can do that. But it won't alter how Earth is measured, will it?
Nope, not at all.
It's just a question of time. I'm amazed that we've gone this far, measuring Earth flat in every single example, still believing it's a ball. I'm amazed that people who measure Earth flat at all scales can buy into the religion of a ball, but my amazement doesn't change the Western world's religion of a ball. There's a Western world religion of a ball that's now spread throughout the entire known world. And there's not a great deal we can do about it, suppressed into this corner. But that's life. I know it's flat. Everyone who's watching knows it's flat. The people who don't like it want to tell me that they've known for 1,000 years it's a ball. Good for you. You know that it's a ball in spite of it being measured flat. Good for you.
Yeah, and that's a great attitude to take, but it seems like, what do you call it? Hope? Because they keep coming to our service trying to tell us how, no, you don't understand. It's been known for thousands of years that Earth is a sphere. And it seems like they cannot leave us alone. I don't go to their service, but they come here. Guys like people like Danny Faulkner, you know, guys that have a little title. So I think it's cope because, like you said, they know it's measured flat.
Yes, but they have their justifications for why being measured flat is okay on a ball. For example, but not limited to, Simon Dan. Well, yes, okay, on the short distances, we do survey Earth as flat, but we don't only measure it flat. That's their justification. So it's okay to measure a ball flat. In no circumstances is it ever acceptable to measure a ball flat at any scale ever, because they're not flat ever. We do measure it flat at all scales without exception. Brian's joined, presumably because he's heard his name mentioned about his father-in-law doing surveys. Or not.
No, hello everyone here, Nathan. I wasn't listening at all.
Well, that's just rude.
I can't do anything about that.
You just wake up, Brian.
Apologise.
Okay, well, the subject at hand, Brian, is the horizontal distance measurements utilised on the larger scales beyond about, 90 miles? I think it's 250 square kilometres, something like that. But above absolutely, without question, above 100 miles, you're no longer using plane surveying. But you're still measuring heights with horizontal distances.
You are. You're using plane surveying, no matter what the distance. This thing about there being planar surveying and geodetic surveying and they're different. No, it's just geodetic surveying generally deals with bigger areas, but they're still using, like, they can't not do planar surveying. All their processes and techniques and equipment is based around planar surveying. My mother's partner, he used trigonometry all the time. He discussed it in depth with me from mountain to mountain, like all the trigonometry. Not like that's what he did. If you're measuring the angular size of a mountain at a distance, you must use a horizontal and verticals. You know what I mean? There's no way around it. It's just look. The bowlers have been saying for 10 years that they measure curve or measure a globe on the big. Well, but they've been saying that they account for and they allow for curvature at bigger distances. That's because they're not measuring any of this nonsense. They don't. You can't measure something you can't see, number one. So you can only measure as far as you can see. So you can see Mount Everest from the Kathmandu Valley. So you can't take an angular size of Mount Everest from the Kathmandu Valley, which is about 100 miles away. And from further again, because Mount Everest is so big. So a lot of mountains, you can see them from a big distance, especially if you're at a high elevation. You can definitely measure the angular size of that mountain from a big distance. Right. So other than being up mountains, like once they're not up a mountain, then that a mountain would, like, as far as surveying goes, that's the only other thing they use that's higher than a mountain is a plane. So they'll take strip video of land, of the surface of Earth with a plane, and that'll allow them then to put it together. They have to also measure every part of that as well. So you can't measure, as I said, you can't measure something if you can't see it. So how are they measuring things they can't see? They're not. Complete and utter nonsense. There is no curvature measured at any point in claimed planar or geodetic surveying. It's all, it's just they can mathematically add it in by adding an R value that they've never measured and can't be measured into their mathematics. It means absolutely nothing. As an example, in Ireland, we have these stations.
Before you do,
they're like,
just before you give me your example, I just want to shout out a super chat. V. Dilly, thank you very much for the super chat. Hope everyone on the panel's doing well. God bless. Thank you very much for the super chat. Go well. Go well. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. In Ireland, we have these benchmarks. Now, they have surveying benchmarks everywhere. But in Ireland, we have these benchmarks that are kind of particular, where they are, let's say, up at a high elevation. They're, let's say, nearly an almost triangular piece of stone, but they're not a triangle because they're flat top. And on that flat top has 3 channels, right? So let's say there's 3 channels cut out of it. So if you pour water in, it'll pour out 3 ways. Well, it probably won't because it will because water will flow. But the point they're making is these 3 channels are, if you had a long enough, let's just say, steel bar, you could put it into one of those channels, and then into the same channel, another channel in a similar thing at a big distance away, at some other high elevation. If you understand what I mean. So they're all based around trigonometry. So the whole of Ireland has been surveyed in this way, and they have these benchmarks. So it's impossible. It's impossible for there to be curvature measured for this to be a situation. Now, Ireland is a very small country. I take that on board, but it doesn't matter. Like, you've got a lot of area that's being measured, and it's all being measured, and they have these in place to show you. You know what I mean? This is the whole point of them. Is that if you had them on a piece of paper, you could connect them all up via lines, and they'd make a lot of triangles with very big area within the lines. But they won't be making any curved angles or any curved triangles. So, of course, they do similar processes in other parts of the world, but I know these are unique enough to Ireland, these particular benchmarks.
Are they the same as the OS benchmarks that I put in my video?
I'm not sure. What could you describe those? Because same thing.
I'll do one better. If you can keep the conversation going, I'll dig out my example, because there's a benchmark just up the road from me. So the high ground for me is just at the church I got married in, which is 300 yards away from me. So when it was nice and quiet, I don't know how long ago. I think it was back in February, just before. It was the day I had one of my teeth removed. So I was in a lot of pain when I did it. Not that that's relevant to the story. Anyway, I strolled across at sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, so that there'd be no traffic and noise while I was making this video about the Ordnance Survey benchmark that's literally chiselled into the side of the church. And it just looks like a bit like an alien spacecraft. It's a table. That's what it actually is. It's a straight horizontal line with a vertical line coming down from the centre, and then two 45 and whatever the other degree angle is coming off the sides of it. So it looks like a table. I'll dig out my video of it. Just give me a couple of minutes.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I remember that.
I know those. I think we have those here as well. I think they use them in the US as well, and I think they're kind of across the board. It's just showing you the horizontal and the vertical at that exact. And it just giving you, it just has a height to it, an elevation, a vertical elevation, kind of thing. So yeah, but the benchmark I thought about, they're slightly different. They're a capstone, and it's on the top of the cap. I'd have to get a photo of it. Give me a minute if you're.
No, you keep the conversation. I'm looking. I'll look for mine, and you look for yours after.
Oil even.
We're both looking for stuff. The air will go dead, and we'll just be left with Neil.
I will say something. If that's not telling you Earth is measured flat, I don't know what is.
Well, you can't measure it without using horizontals and verticals. Can't do that, and regardless of the distance. So the thing about how they account for curvature on the bigger scale, no, they just mathematically add it in afterwards. You can only.
Yeah, and the only way you can have horizontals and verticals on a sphere is you have to go inside of it then. And ain't nobody doing that.
You can't have them at all.
I agree. But in the diagrams, they show you in the center of a circle, not even a sphere.
So that would be more like not in surveying. What they'll show you on geodetic surveying diagrams is they'll show you a sphere out, but then they show you a flat square on that sphere of a great area. That great area around on the surface of the flat square, and they'll show you a line coming from the center of that square, is meeting the center of the globe, and going straight out from the surface of that sphere. But that's only nonsense, because what that actually is that square it has another square in front of it and behind it to its sides at every corner, and they have the same. You know what I mean? Because that's how it's always surveyed. There is no curvature, consistent curvature measured. There is a particular processes for measuring curvature, and which would be elevation changes, which would be differential leveling, and then for the slope grade within that, you would have the process of rise over run. So it's like these processes are used everywhere all the time since the start of surveying. There's nowhere they're not used.
Buck Sodbuster tried to throw that differential leveling at us. That's a joke.
Differential leveling again.
Differential leveling is not a joke. Differential leveling is what they do.
It is, but they're using horizontal distances in order to apply differential leveling. You need horizontal distances in the first instances. Those are the measurements. The trig fails if you don't have that. You can't use trig unless you've got a horizontal distance. So all scales, Earth is measured using horizontal distance measurements. There are no exceptions.
I meant what he showed me as a diagram for how they do this differential leveling is a joke, because he has a flat baseline, but instead his is curved.
Well, then it won't give him a horizontal distance, will it?
Exactly.
Right.
That's why I said
Not
it's ridiculous.
differential leveling. Then it's nothing to do with that. It's not surveying.
It's not called
Just 'cause some polar-
differential curving.
Sorry, Nick.
It's not what it's called, is it? Differential curving? No. Differential leveling based on the level that you use for the trig that you use with the horizontal distance that we measure. So we need horizontal distances, which is precisely what is applied without exception. So Earth's measured flat. I just want to play through this video just so I can take it off screen. It's only a couple of minutes. An ordnance survey benchmark. This style being called a cut mark. It's cut into buildings all over the UK. And this benchmark has an exact height above sea level, noted by Ordnance Survey. That's 6 AM to be exact. And we are... To be honest, you don't need the rest of the preamble from the video. That's all you need. I mean, I can go forward to the bit that was relevant just then, which is me discovering it.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to measure...
Exactly as I said it would. Say again, Brian.
Sorry, I thought you were stopping the video.
I'll just play this last, 30 seconds.
Mary Magdalene's Church. Closer to this cut mark. This is an Ordnance Survey cut mark, and it is a benchmark that they've been putting in place in buildings around the UK right up until the late 90s.
So on screen is this, which is called a cut mark, and it is an Ordnance Survey benchmark, and you can probably just make it out. There's a horizontal line, a vertical line, and then 2 diagonal lines that come off it that basically look like a table. And it's referenced to sea level, and if you type in to Google Ordnance Survey cut marks, they're all over the UK. They're all referenced to sea level. Earth can and is flat for these to exist. That's how they work. Again, there's no two ways about this. That's how it's surveyed. Off sea level, with a height relative to an average. That's your height above sea level, marked with what's called a cut mark. That's what this is. That's how it's measured. Earth's measured flat.
Yeah, they call them, they call them benchmarks here. I don't know what they call them in the UK. But yeah, they'd be the same thing, a benchmark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't be, Neil, don't be listening to any of them pollers when it comes to this topic.
No, I
They
had a
only-
picture posted the other day, and I wanted Nathan to go over
So
it
it
for a
contradicted
reason.
itself. It contradicted itself.
Yeah, but we have an audience too, so it'd be nice if the audience could see the picture because he puts that everywhere. I posted it again with his what do you call that nonsense? Differential leveling, not nonsense, but how he proposes it's done is nonsense.
There's different methods for finding out the grade and slope of the land over a distance these days. Like you can use LiDAR, I think, and stuff like that. But like if you were to practically do it, it's differential leveling, where you'll be using an auto level and a measuring rod. So it'll take 2 people, one person to hold a measuring rod, one person to a site with the auto level, and that's what they'll do. And that's how they determine, let's say from that benchmark, they can start determining elevations from the closest road to that benchmark. They'll have a height to that benchmark as well. which will be a height above, probably, I think it's above I think it'll be the road to the right of it there. I think will be in a direct line. That will be the height of that benchmark above that road. Pretty sure that's how it works.
Am I supposed to be
could be
putting this
wrong
on
about
screen?
that.
Sorry, Brian. Am I supposed to have this on screen?
Yes, put it on screen because look what it says. It's dead right off the top. Back site is a site taken to the graduated staff at a point of known elevation. Well, how did you get that known elevation? And it's not from that little curve you got saying mean sea level and it's curved. That's a contradiction.
Yeah, see that straight line? See that straight line?
Yeah, it says mean sea level and it's got a curve to it. What an idiot.
Yeah, but these are the diagrams that have been put out by. This is not something he made up. I've seen these type of diagrams many times.
Well, I know.
Put out there by surveying. See that straight line between the order level and the measuring rod that I was just talking about? That straight line, like they'll be using that straight line and parallels to that straight line for every bit of what they're doing, regardless of the distance. So how can the line underneath it be curved? If that has to be parallel. You know what I mean? So if you're talking about surveying, let's say in a straight line, let's say you surveyed in a straight line 70 miles over the course of whatever, a week or something, all the elevations, right? Then that 70 miles all those lines have to be parallel to each other, all horizontal, all parallel to each other. That's an auto level. Right, it creates a straight horizontal line. That's the purpose of them. So how can they all be parallel to each other and then be elevations, but the line underneath it being mean sea level be curved?
It can't. It's an axiomatic. It can't. It's a defiance of the axiomatic principle being used in the measurement. So I use this, but just not with surveying. I use it with the Earth curve calculation. So when begging the question, proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator makes the same assertions as would be made in surveying, they also require the same axiomatic principle hold true. That is to say, in Earth curve maths, you require surface level be parallel with eye level. Now that's an axiomatic principle that cannot be defied. If it is, your maths fails. Or to put it another way, Earth must be measured flat for Earth curve maths to succeed. You need parallel eye level. And what's it parallel to? The surface level you measured your height off.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the same without a dingleberry, would it? Come on.
The dingleberry's part of their faith. I mean, in a way, it is kind of... It does lead you to despair to a certain degree as a flirt. Because what's the point? If I can bring you to an axiomatic principle where in mathematics you require parallel surface level and eye level for it to function, but in your diagram you appeal to, like Dave McKeegan did, when unfuckable, fugly Dave McKeegan pointed at the diagram we use from celestial navigation manuals and books. In their diagrams, they've got a curve, and then they're drawing an angle on the curve. And Dave McKeegan's appeal was, well, look, even in your own diagram, you've got a curve. You're like, are you kidding me? So in favour of your belief, you will defy the axiomatic principle being used in the measurement. And what's the answer? Yes. Yes, we will. You're like, well, then there is no hope for you. You cannot defy an axiomatic principle in measurement in favour of a religious belief of a ball, because a diagram shows you it that way. The measurements are what they are. You can't defy parallel, or your measurement fails. It is that simple. But like I say, what do you get in the face of that? Well, the diagram shows a curve. Look, this diagram's got a curved sea level. Yeah, well, then it won't be parallel. It won't work. Well, the diagram shows it curved, so it must work. Okay, well, then you're giving up your axiomatic principles in measurement for your religious belief. There is no helping you. What do you want from me? You want to tell me that thousands of years of knowledge have led you to the point where you defy axiomatic principles? Okay, I'm done with you. I don't care anymore. Go away.
That's the right attitude to have.
If you look at that diagram, that when you're doing differential leveling, you will have an auto level, right? And you will know the elevation of that auto level. and you will have somebody with a measuring rod, and you'll do a foresight and a backside. So, right, you'll determine which one direction is forward, right, and that the other person with the measuring rod, you will send a straight line basically via you're not sending, it's only a visual straight line to the person with the measuring rod in front of you, whatever, they'll be like maybe 100 feet away or whatever, and you'll do the same behind you, right? So what you're doing really essentially is you're looking behind where you were before that, really, and then the person walks in front of you, and then you do it again. Then you go again beyond that person, and you do it again, right? Or you can do it in a 360, right? But the point being is that they need those to be a tangent, but they can't be a tangent because a tangent to a sphere can't have can't have two straight lines, right, making a 90-degree angle with that tangent, right, and the Earth be a globe. Whereas they require all those straight lines, which are the measuring rod, right, that are meeting those horizontals, all those measuring rods meeting let's say the side of the outer level at 90 degrees, they all, right, are 90 degrees to each other. So if you measure, so you can't have the first two you do, that can't be a tangent, because a tangent would mean you're not referencing, if you're moving from one end to the other end of a tangent, you're not referencing the Earth anymore.
It's not the ground. If it's a tangent,
it's not the ground.
Yeah, it's not the surface level anymore. And in this instance, you're rather than define parallel, you're defining the axiomatic principle of perpendicularity. You don't have perpendicular if you're on a ball. You've got a single point of tangency. Well, that doesn't give you 90 degrees. It's a single point. You need a straight line. Well, we've got a tangent. Well, then it's not the surface anymore. You're supposed to be measuring the surface.
Exactly. It's not the surface anymore.
Yeah, which is where we get to the frustrating part of our opponents telling us that, well, we're not measuring the surface. Okay, that's true. We're not measuring your ball surface. We are definitely building things on the surface of Earth. Quite successfully, you're probably living in one. Meanwhile, that would require us measuring the bleeding surface. It's just not your ball surface in your religious faith that defies axiomatic principles like perpendicularity and parallel. For measurement.
Yeah, I made a video. Sorry, Wonder.
Yeah, Wonder.
Just.
No, I was just saying that I love that point you made, Nathan. Yeah, it's not their surface. It's great.
Yeah, just to round that out.
I made a video.
Oh, sorry, Brian, just one more thing. Just to reiterate that, it's because that's what they use as their incoherent get-out-of-jail-free card when it fails for them. They tell you, the person utilising a measurement of Earth's surface, that it isn't the surface. Now, in frustration, I've seen flirfs do this, where they argue that, no, it is the surface. It's like, no, you don't need to argue for this. It's axiomatically tied to Earth measurement. So you don't have to justify it. You just need to agree with them telling you it's not their surface, because it isn't their ball surface, instead of debating with them about it being the surface that is measured, because that's never going to change. How Earth gets surveyed is what it is. We do, at all scales, measure Earth flat with perpendicular right angles, as Brian just described, at these multiple measuring points, and parallel eye level to the surface level, like with flying. These axiomatic principles cannot be defied, and they will not be violated by a religious belief, at which point you get what Wandek has just commended me for, which is them telling you that it's not the surface. Just remember, it's not your ball surface, but we do definitely survey Earth when we survey Earth. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah. Just on that point, before we go off from it, I made a video some time back called the Tangent Paradox. And the point of the video was exactly that. If you and me were out, Nathan, and you had an outer level and I had the measuring rod, according to their claim, you put the the auto level the tripod down, and you make sure it's level everything. Then you would measure. We'd have a distance, horizontal distance between that and the measuring rod, right? And then I'd be, let's say you looking at me. Then I go around to the back of where you are, and you turn the auto level around 180 degrees, and you do the same again. Now, according to their claim, that has to be the end of the survey. We can't continue on because that is a tangent. Technically, you've just measured, technically, according to them, you have just created a tangent with your auto level. So we have to stop the survey at that point and go home. That is within their claim. Because you cannot have two right angles on a tangent, right? You can't. Geometrically, you can't have two right angles on a tangent, because then your right angle is to nothing. It's not referencing anything. But according to them, that's where the survey has to stop. But it doesn't. In reality, it continues on like that. So they can't all be tangents. Do you know what I mean? It's so ridiculous. You know?
To quote Simon Dan, though, Brian, we don't only measure Earth flat.
Also, though, when we watched the basics of surveying the other day, part 1, the surveyor went through the basic parts that you'll be using. I don't think it was a tangent line included in that equipment and bits and pieces that the surveyors use.
No, he didn't.
In part 4, though. It's in part 4, guys.
Yeah, I mean, what they'll take us to is the account for Earth curve injected into the calculations after we've measured Earth flat.
Nathan, that's absolutely correct. That's exactly what they do. They always skip right past the flat Earth measurement and try to go on to their religion. But that's good that we're stopping everybody right at the beginning.
Or curvature would be change in elevation, would it not, Nathan?
Well, no, because in terms of measurement, that would be rise over run. I mean, I haven't got your diagram back up now, but in terms of where you drew the perpendicular right angle to the drop from eye level on the instrument you had on the diagram, to have the curve beneath where the instrument's measuring, you'd have a measured curve of the hill. And that would be measured with rise over run, wouldn't it?
Well, it'd be differential leveling and rise over run would be measuring it. If it was there, it would be being measured all the time, but it's not measured at any time ever. Right. There is elevation changes measured, but no one is measuring a consistent curve. Those elevations are with respect to a consistent horizontal.
Perfect.
Being mean sea level.
Exactly. So to describe the elevation change, it's deviating from the horizontal. It's back to the Bevtard position, which is to say, oh, well, we've got topology, therefore Earth can't be flat. Yeah, it can. The difference in topology is measured with respect to a horizontal plane of reference. That's how we know how high or low it is with respect to sea level as an average. That's how topology is measured. With respect to a flat plane.
It's game over, guys.
Yeah. I mean,
it's funny, though, isn't it? Like,
go ahead, Rondek.
Just saying, it's funny. All of these ballers, they did it with celestial. They're all suddenly experts in celestial navigation, but they do it slightly different than the books say. And they're all experts in surveying, but they do it slightly different than the experts say. They use different things like tangent lines and all that. So they become experts in all these fields, but they don't do it exactly as it is being done professionally.
Yeah, but the thing is, even the professionals, there's plenty of professionals out there that will know exactly how rise over run works, how differential leveling works, how leveling your tool to a horizontal plane of reference works, how you must have an axiomatic parallel with eye level with respect to sea level and surface level. They know how all of this works, but they still believe they're on a ball.
I was just going to say that, Nathan. I could go to a surveyor. They're actually doing it down the block from me. I see them with all their tools. If I go up to one of them and say, you think we're living on a globe? And they'll say, yeah.
It's called cognitive dissonance. And it's a very difficult battle to face if you're dealing with somebody in that position. That is to say that their religious belief in being on a ball taught to them at school is in contradiction with the measurements of Earth. And you get statements like, well, we have bent sea level from Simon Dan again. Oh, well, we've got curved sea level. No, we haven't, or we don't have parallel eye level when measuring. That defies the axiomatic principle used in the measurement, Dan. But in your mind, your religious belief of Earth being a ball leads you to declare a contradiction in terms. Well, we've got curved sea level. No, we haven't. You're an idiot, but that's what you need to believe when you're stifled with cognitive dissonance, something we're not afflicted with. But for the last 10 years, a lot of us, many are still in this position now, want to convert the world. And the world isn't for converting. The world's for controlling, and it ain't being controlled by you. Or me.
That's a good point, Nathan.
Neil, you said a minute ago that if you went and asked, or if someone went and asked those surveyors, is the Earth a globe? They say yes, or something like that. Or if you ask them, is it flat? They say no, they say it's a globe. How do you know that? Didn't Bev ask the surveyor? And he said, yeah, it's flat.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Yeah, but you can ask them if it's flat.
I have yet to hear any surveyor outside of the bozos and the frauds that came into this arena, which amounted to 3 people. Right, and one of them I don't even believe was a surveyor because he was a Marine and he was a lot of other stuff before he was a surveyor. So I don't know how he became a surveyor. But long story short, outside of them, I've not heard any surveyor make any claim
No,
about measuring Earth as a globe.
No, I have. I asked him. This is when I was in New York. I seen him doing it, and this is when we first started talking about it. I was working, and I said, "Hey, do you guys still think we're on a globe as you're looking at those horizontals?" They said, "Yeah, it's a globe. We're just doing local surveying." So in other words, at some point,
What they said is we don't only measure it flat. Sorry.
right? At some point, hold on. At some point, in other words, they're saying at some point, when you're measuring larger distances, it's going to be curved somehow.
Well, that's funny because at that point they're claiming they're using it. They can't not see. They're denying the tangent at that point. See, to say that they're locally surveying the Earth as with a planar baseline, right? To say that they're doing that is denial, a complete denial of the geometry of the Earth, of the geometry of the Earth they're claiming it is. If you understand what I mean, you can't at any point not make a tangent, but they're denying the tangent. A complete tangent denial, while also claiming that it is a globe. But it can't be a globe and you deny the tangent. It can't. Those two things geometrically don't work. You know?
Yeah, it's what Nathan says. It's cog dis. It's like embedded in them. They really have no idea. Now, with this topic out there as it is, I'd say that there's more surveyors now that do know Earth is measured flat. I mean, it's got to be driving them insane. Like, holy shoot, after all these years, because the topic is out there.
That's why we have to be kept separated from the masses and bundled into a pool with idiots like Dan and Dave. And then the pool is a limited group of people that can all be directed towards the one side of the argument while the other side's suppressed. But that pool isn't mingling with the rest of society. So where you think, oh, well, the surveyors must be suffering cognitive dissonance, why? They're just going about their normal lives, aren't they? Why would they be suffering cognitive dissonance?
Yeah, but this topic is out there more than you think, Nathan. It really is.
I don't think so. Really? I don't think so, Neil.
I have no doubt, Nathan, that this.
Nathan, look at TikTok alone.
Yeah, but never mind TikTok and stuff, Neil. Just a second. It's out there amongst the surveyors and the pilots and the navigators. I have no doubt. Right? They can't rock the boat for because of their career. They can't rock the boat. Have no doubt. They've been sitting around going, what don't we do here? You know what I mean? If it was that, we'd have to be doing this, this, and this. What don't we do? Planes don't do that. We don't do that. We don't survey that way. That doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Those conversations have happened. Where, you know what I mean? There's going to be people with cognitive dissonance, but you have no doubt those conversations are taking place. So we've had surveyors as part of on our side here in this arena, but most of them have left. They haven't stayed around. Not that they've left the flat out, but they've just left the arena because of all the BS that goes on.
Yeah, take Brian Mullen. What was it, 7 or 8 years ago? Comes out, starts describing how Earth's measured flat and breaking down how it can't be measured ball-shaped. You get people like George Netanyahu contacting his employer, trying to take his job from him for detailing how Earth gets measured, how it isn't measured spherically. And that means that you're going to take his job off him? Why? Oh, right, because he's not in congruence with your belief of a ball that defies the axiomatic principle of Earth measurement, so therefore have his job off him.
I was thinking the same thing as you were saying it, the Brian Mullen guy, and that was early in this, right? That's got to be like 2017, 2018.
Oh, well.
When this transpired.
2016.
George Netchuk's house burnt down and then he died. So he got what he deserved.
Well, I remember Mark Sarger still has the video up of the female Dutch pilot who was grounded and had her commercial license taken from her because she said the Earth was flat back in 2017.
Yeah, she had to take a psych evaluation when she landed.
Yeah, and there was her and another lady used to speak on one of the Discord, or they were friends. And there was another lady who was a retired commercial pilot, was a flat earther, used to be on 24/7 some years ago. And the two of them used to speak. So it's like like that guy. Remember the commercial pilot you met, the retired man you met at that meet and greet you went to, Nathan? Remember the presentation you were doing?
Huh?
You remember you went to that? You remember that thing you did where you went and you travelled and you did the presentation, and at that, within the crowd, was a retired pilot, commercial pilot.
Oh yes, I do remember now. Yes. That's right.
Yeah, he spoke to you about the pitch data and other things like that. Yeah, there you go. See, when they're retired, they can say whatever, but when they're working, they can't.
Yeah, I do remember that now. Yeah, that was at the Flat Earth Social. So Brian's talking
just
about...
back to the surveying a little bit.
Sorry, one more time, Deck. One deck.
I'm just sorry. I was saying just back to that the surveying. They admit that we're just measuring it locally flat. But even Brian will know more on this. And you mentioned it the other day, Nathan, and we all know GPS works on a grid system. But so even when you go and look into how Earth is measured or surveyed on large scales, it'll give you GPS and lasers, and there's a couple more I can't remember off the top of my head. But when you drill into them applications or equipment, none of them are measuring curvature. Even they tell you that they measure angles, they measure in points and distances between the points on the surface of Earth. So when they say, well, locally it's flat, but when we do it on larger scales, it's curvature. No, it's not, because you just look at the equipment again and what the equipment they're using is designed for, and it's not designed for measuring curvature. So that's incorrect, and you can just drill into that and find that out yourself dead easy.
Well, that kind of speaks to what Brian said earlier, actually, which is something that I was corrected on, but Brian was kind enough to do it subtly, which is to say I was incorrect when I said there's a difference between... I've been Jedi mind tricked by my opponent, basically. Again, I'll thank Brian for not labouring this point, but I'll labour it off my own back, which is to say that my assumption that there are differences between these two methodologies, no, there isn't. They're both using the exact same tools. They're both using the exact same methodology. It's only so that you can justify measuring it flat at a local level, like Simon Dan did. So you can say, oh, well, we don't only measure it flat. We've got these different types of surveying. And yeah, up to 100 miles, we can measure it flat. Well, why? Why can you measure it flat? Why would you ever measure it flat? Unless it's flat. Well, the answer is because it's flat, you measure it flat at all scales, but that's a problem. So it's best to describe two different types and then lie about one of them whilst detailing the other measuring it flat. But in reality, they're both exactly the same thing. They're both using the same processes. They're both using trig. They're both using horizontal distance measurement. They're both leveling their tools to a horizontal plane. They're both using parallel eye level with surface level. They're both referencing sea level. They're both the same. Earth's measured flat regardless of how you title the description of the surveying itself. Right, Brian?
Yeah, even my mother's partner, Nathan, he detailed for me the size of the areas that he would be measuring or surveying, and that he would be using trigonometry, like between three mountains and and the whole mountain range and all that, and what he had to do. And he made maps as well as part of his job. So he had to make maps of whole areas, and he used horizontals and verticals and trigonometry. Because when he retired was in 1993, and that was the start of GPS and other things coming in. So none of that stuff was there before that. Before that, everything he did was all practical. There was he said there was a couple of things that had turned up that were using like radar and stuff like that. But for him and for the majority of his work, everything he did was practical. So he used a theodolite, and he used trigonometry. He would have used auto levels, things like that. But like he wouldn't have been using GPS and stuff. And he said everything he did was trigonometry, like whole mountain ranges and all that. And it's he knew I was a flat earther. He should say he knows. But I never had that argument with him. I just spoke with him about surveying. And every single thing I said, he said, I don't really need to teach you well. He said, you totally understand it. He said to me twice, he said, you should have been a surveyor, he said, you just have an actual understanding of this. But what I was doing there, I didn't want to have an argument with him. But everything I said to him was correct. Absolutely everything I said to him. And when he was speaking to me, I understood everything he was saying. I said, this is because of that, that's because of this. And he'd go, yes. Right? And all I was doing was laying out how the earth is measured. And it's all in reference to the same horizontal plane.
Yep.
Right? So he was agreeing with me without me having an argument with him, if you understand.
I had the exact same experience with my sister. So it was weird because it was during an argument with my brother-in-law about Earth not being flat from his perspective. And what I'm doing is detailing how celestial navigation functions. And at the corner of my eye, I can see my sister, who's trained in navigation, has owned several boats, nodding. Just nodding along casually. And when I look over and you're like, well, why are you nodding along? She's like, well, don't you forget I had several boats? Now, I've mentioned this at the time, but her previous husband died and I've blocked a huge chunk of that section of my life out as a result of trauma. But as soon as she said it, I'm like, yeah, of course. I've seen you holding a freaking sextant. Yeah? When we're out at sea. I know you know how to do this, and you're not disagreeing with me because that's how it's done. Not, it might be done that way, but we could add in curvature. It's no, that is how it's done if you don't want to die at sea.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. When you're not having an argument with someone, if you're just speaking to them about what they do, and don't have an argument with the person, don't have the earth is flat, and then say, no, it's a globe, because they're instantly, you don't know, but more likely people are they're likely to do that. But as I said, same again, like with you and your sister, me and my mother's partner, like just having a general conversation about it, there was nothing he could disagree with. Totally, right. Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
But there's
sorry,
well, I was just going to say that this was we're tailing into the subject matter that I wanted to have on Friday, but we never really got to it. I tried to instigate it, but now we're seeming to etch our way into it on this show, which is great, with 10 minutes left. But the divide and rule aspect. So earlier I was detailing how we're stuck in a pond with Simon Dan and Dave McKeegan, right? And therefore our subject, that's me and Dan together, our subject matter is shielded from the general populace. And anybody who's on the fringes looking in gets drawn in and taken to Dan or Dave or whoever, right, to reaffirm their biases. But in the light of what I thought would be something like Flat Earth highlighting this to the masses, it hasn't been. It's been a political murder that's ended up bringing out the best in people like Chase Hughes. Now, I mentioned him again on Friday because I thought this is where the conversation would hopefully lead, and it didn't. But Chase Hughes is one of the behavioural panel, and he is absolutely on fire at the moment. Go and subscribe to Chase Hughes, because what he's detailing off the back of Charlie Kirk's murder is how we are manipulated, and it's being broken down in the most concise way possible. Now, it's all well and good me describing me and Dan being in the same pond together. It's much more overt when it's something that isn't connected to your own subject matter. So in this case, a political murder. Very tragic. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. But Chase Hughes is pointing out that you are being fueled with rage and hatred towards a seeming opponent who, if sat across from you on a dinner table, you might find that 90% of what you actually deal with in day-to-day life is exactly the same as theirs. Their business is the same as your business. Your strifes and woes are the same as theirs. You've got more in common than you have not. Therefore, why would you be baying for blood? Well, because you watch Twitter and YouTube and Hulu and Netflix, and these things position you in a society where you have an opponent, someone to brace against. Now, for us, it is Craig, Simon, Dan, Fugly Dave, whoever. But why? Well, so that we can maintain the argument. I've been saying this for the last 6 months. What's the point of us being here? So that there can be a perception of an argument. Without the perception of an argument, without the perception of a flat earth debate, there's just the measurements and no one arguing about it. Well, you need people to be arguing about it, so there's a perception of them versus us and a debate to be had. Neither of which in reality are actually true. It's a manufactured perception. Left versus right, flat versus round, etc., etc. And it's all an illusion designed to suppress you, to keep you without any power. Because if you're busy fighting with Dan or Dave or Craig, then you're not actually out there opposing the people who put these systems in place in the first place. And that's the point. Dan hasn't come up with the idea of us being on a globe, has he? So why am I fighting with Dan? Oh, well, I'm buying into the paradigm of left versus right, flat versus curve, keeping us busy till we die, and the whole process can start again without anything have changed. Exactly the same situation. We're still measuring Earth flat, and there's still numpties who believe it's a ball. So better to have the numpties away from the power structures argue amongst themselves in some pond over here. Well, the minute you recognise that's what's happening, you're less likely to be manipulated. Now, as I say, although it's not flat Earth related, the principle directly translates across from the left versus right rage and fury that leads people to literally kill people who disagree with them. Now, martyrdom, in the case of Charlie Kirk, will reinforce his ideas. People will go out and they'll search for what he stood for as a result of what's happened and why he stood for it. He'll become a martyr. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go out murdering our opponents. This is an absolute disgraceful situation. But that's the net result. But it keeps the actual directed fury away from those who are actually worthy of receiving it, and has it internally battled amongst the people at ground level. Not the people who've instigated these systems, not at all. But yet you'll watch the news and you'll hear people talking about how they should be, how those people shouldn't be existing. Trying to carefully phrase it so I don't use my monetization. I'm really poor. Please smash the super chat.
Well, it's funny you should bring up Charlie Kirk, because yesterday at Times Square Church, there was a certain pastor delivering a message. And he said, I'm going to say a few things and tell me if you agree or you don't agree. And he mentioned a few things and he had the whole place. Yeah, praise the Lord. Hallelujah. And he said, well, that's not me. That's exactly what Charlie Kirk was saying. Funny how you should praise that. But yeah, if you just stick them in a normal situation, they're not going to be wailing and gnashing their teeth at you.
Well, the use of Charlie Kirk is a bit of an awkward kind of an example, to be honest with you, because he said some things that were very controversial to you. And
Yeah, because
somebody's
you're a
used-
sympathizer for the freaking other
Hold on.
side. Yeah, we know.
No,
haven't
it's
everybody
not,
said
it's not
yet?
that other
Hold
side.
on,
It's
Neil.
not. See, there you go, straight away onto a side. Right?
I haven't been saying anything. but
Neil,
I'm
Neil.
Trying to point out a
Hello,
balanced situation.
hello, inaudible conversation. Neil, chill. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, he said things that he had views and viewpoints and things that I would totally disagree with. And he said some stuff that I would totally disagree. I didn't follow it going at all. But I'm sure he said some stuff a lot of people would agree with. But rather than my point is, rather than talking about him because he has had his own flaws, the point being more that they have this illusion of a left versus right, where in reality, if you're talking about that kind of situation, it should only be right versus wrong for every situation, not what your leftist ideas are or your right-wing ideas are. It should only be right versus wrong. So they have this illusion, and America has fallen for it more than I think everyone's fallen for it. We have it here, but I think to the extreme, America has fallen for it to the extreme more than other places. And they have these two sides that really hate each other. And they're both the same, grew up in the same country, in the same place. Do you know what I mean? It's great, it's ridiculous. But they didn't give themselves those ideas. Those ideas were handed to them. You know, just like Simon Dan didn't come up with the idea of the Earth being a globe. That idea was handed to him. You know, so it's like they do try and like that's why when it comes to us, Nathan, they have to keep us talking about ice walls and domes, because then we're not talking about the actual measurements of Earth, because from that and about things to do with actual science and physics, you know, and natural law. So that information is not getting out there as a whole to the public. So when people think of flat earthers, they think of, well, they have a point in some ways, but I know about this ice wall and dome. Do you know what I mean? Like two things there was no evidence shown for this ice wall and this dome, ever. Right. But straight away, flat earthers, out of the gate, started claiming there was an ice wall and a dome.
Yeah, I completely agree. When I look at the popular flat earthers, I'm like, okay, well, let's go have a quick listen. I won't name and shame anybody in particular, but I listen to them. I'm like, it's interesting that these people continue to rise in popularity in this little corner of the internet we call flat earth, when their rhetoric is identical to the 10-year-old rhetoric that we walked away from 8 years ago. That is to say, they're talking about, as you say, ice walls and domes, but not only that, they're talking about 9/11, they're talking about magic and spells and spelling.
Free energy.
Dark energy. Well, is that what you said?
Yeah, free energy.
Yeah, free energy. All this kind of crap. Stuff that we were shuffled towards initially. And back when we were, the videos that we produced were popular. They would allow the general masses to see those. Now, obviously, since then, there's been heavy censorship foisted upon YouTube, seemingly from the American government. But regardless, the people who still maintain a certain degree of popularity in the subject of flat Earth are talking about nonsense. They're spewing garbage that makes flat earthers look like idiots. Well, they will, in the pond at least, maintain a certain degree of popularity because they become easily ridiculed as a result of their rhetoric. Us, me in specific terms, it's a real struggle. As a YouTuber, it's incredibly difficult. So for me, I've had a couple of weeks off through illness and my ad revenue's halved. That means I'll now struggle to pay my mortgage. So what, for having a few days off, I watch fellow videographers in the same pond casually take 2 weeks off without having to give it a care or mention and then make another video and it'll get hundreds of thousands of views. Why? Well, because they're promoting garbage if they're on the flat earth side, or promoting standard fare rhetoric that defies flat earth measurements if they're on the ball side. So they don't need to make any justification. Me, if I don't do a live stream every single day and produce extra ancillary shorts videos every single day, I can't pay my mortgage. But yet, 10 years ago, monetization was far easier. Why? Well, because I was talking about spells and spelling. And 9/11.
Well, from a YouTube position, let's say YouTube is like Amazon. You work, or you making YouTube videos and me making YouTube videos, and let's say Simon Dan making YouTube videos, and Dave McKeegan making YouTube videos. It's like we're all working on the same factory floor doing the same job, but Simon Dan and Dave McKeegan are getting paid much better wages. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's the most unfair work situation in history, I think. Well,
No, you're absolutely correct. And why? Well, because there's a power structure that's in place that doesn't need disbanding. It wants to be retained and bolstered. So therefore, well, you can't have people telling the world that the Earth's flat. You need to put a little tag underneath them and suppress them. You're like, okay, why? You don't need to suppress Bigfoot people, do you? Oh no, the Bigfoot people are the flat Earth shills that we have to encounter, aren't we? They're the same idiots that make us all look like numpties. They'll get reasonable viewing numbers, unless they don't need the viewing numbers, unless they need to be seen to be not getting the numbers, like straight after Antarctica.
Well, I would say within the Bigfoot community on YouTube and on social media in general, but let's just say YouTube, I would say there's certain Bigfooters that are more favoured by YouTube than others, if you know what I mean. Now, I'm not saying any of them have or don't have validity. I'm just saying there might be some who are towing the party line, or, you know what I mean, maybe agents, whatever. Whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if that's happening as well. But they're not held back in the same way we are. You know what I mean? They're not held back in that way. They might have 70,000 subscribers and be a small Bigfoot YouTuber and be complaining they only have 70,000 after 3 years. You put as much work as you can, you know what I mean? And you're just finding it hard to get to 27 after 10 years or 11 years. Do you know what I mean? They just, but so I'm sure there's favoured in that arena too, right? Up to a point, because they're going to create two sides in that arena too, aren't they? You're going to have people who are saying this person's a shill there as well. Yep. But you know, but it's just they're not held back like we are.
Absolutely. Right, on that note, I'm going to round out and say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, another massive thank you to today's G+ and Discord panels. Massive thank you to all of you smashing the super chat. Hit me up on PayPal and Patreon and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.